Okay, today we are going to talk about fantasy football. Specifically, seasonal. I got my friends, Joe and Al, double A. So the first thing is how you approach the draft. Some key fundamentals when you start a league is you need to know in and out the scoring system. Because all scoring systems, or every league is different. Most today are called a PPR, which is point per catch or point per reception. And that's to bump up the value of wide receivers. Mainly because running backs typically score points and they wanted to level it. However, there's more wide receivers than there are running backs. So you have to take that in consideration. Supply and demand, supply and demand. So when approaching the draft, I have some things that I do, and you guys do as well. Let's start there. Joe, how do you approach the draft?
You got to approach it with a win now attitude. I like to go running backs first. Try and grab them early, get as many as you can in the first couple of rounds. Because of the fact there's so many receivers, you can get them 4, 5, 6 rounds in. Same with quarterbacks. There's so many quarterbacks, there's so many good quarterbacks, you can get them deeper. Grab your running backs, grab them early, grab them when you can.
Yeah, that's what I go for straight every time is the workhorse running back. As long as they're getting the carries, I'm taking them ahead of any really receiver because you can take shots on receivers unless you can get an elite one fairly early.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to an extent. And my extent is you want safety early in the draft. Because if you miss on those first couple, you're at a big disadvantage. So if you're going to go safety, you want to go with something that there's a demand for, which is running back. So I typically will take a running back, but I want the safest possible one. Now, there's different types of running backs. You have high floor, which is like they run the ball, they get a lot of carries. These are your Derrick Henrys, your Ezekiel Elliott's. Then you have a high ceiling, which are the ones who they have breakaway speed, they go in the passing game, they get that wide receiver PPR, and they'll get a couple carries. Your elites are people that can do both. So I definitely want to grab one of those elites high in the first round, and then I almost abandon the running back situation after that. But that's just me. I like to focus on safety and then get really aggressive in projections later in the draft. Because in a seasonal league, if you lose, you lose. It's over, right? So if you're safe all the way through, you will never win. You might rank 5th, 4th, 2nd, but you'll never win. You have to be ballsy in a seasonal league. You have to take shots. So I like to grab a safe running back and then try to get as much depth of high potential upside. And hope I hit on one of them. Same thing with wide receiver. I like to get one guy that I know I'm starting every week and then high potential upside. Quarterbacks, to me, don't matter except for one thing. I want to link my top wide receiver, my safe one, with his quarterback. So I might take a quarterback a little bit earlier to the consensus, but that's because that's going to maximize my upside. If that safe guy has a good season, I can bind them together. So you got to win now. You're not looking to try to say, oh, this rookie's going to be great. Right? So you want those older guys that have been proven. But
yeah, not a lot of rookies have value in a seasonal league.
Right. I
mean, you get a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, someone who's drafted early and is going to start. But other than that, you can't take a chance on unless you can go deep in your draft for that. Pick up rookies.
Right. So injuries in a seasonal league are weird because you really got to know what type of injury and how long they're going to be out and if they can come back at full. because they might be able to play, but they might not be as effective. And it's a weird thing because it's a roster spot. You know, you could take a different guy, and it sounds weird to say to a lot of people, but if you had Saquon Barkley and he went down, you're dropping. He has no value to you at all. So, injuries in a seasonal league, you can't be afraid to cut, but always try to trade, because the draft is value. That's it. You're trying to get as much value as you can, and then have options to trade. You want to, you know, if you go running back, you delete the pool of running backs. That minimizes your risk in that one category. So that brings me to my best point. The seasonal leagues are won and lost in the waivers. There's a couple different ways you could go with the seasonal league depending on your league. There's a fab and a what do you call it? Ranking order.
The waiver?
Yeah, the waiver. So waiver priority means you have your first picks, and you could burn it on a guy or you could save it. And then the fab is where it's like a blind auction. But the league is won and lost in free agency. Being able to select the right people at the right time. That's where this is typically for me. I don't know about you two. I am super aggressive early in the season on people I see. Because every year there's a couple running backs and a couple wide receivers that end up top 10. And if I think that's the guy, I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna take him. You know.
And don't be afraid if you see somebody on the waiver wire. If you're in one of those fab leagues, do not be afraid to think you're going to overpay for him. Because if you don't, the other guy will. Somebody's going to want them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a little more risky if you have waiver priority, because it takes a while to get that back.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can get anybody you want. So if you want to burn it on that guy, it's basically the same thing as if you have fab money and you're going to burn it on that guy. If there's a guy you like, you go get him.
Mm-hmm.
So going into trades in a seasonal league, typically this doesn't happen that often. Certain scenarios will equate this, but trading in a seasonal league is when you're trying to win, but so is the other guy. So when you're looking for a trade or you're receiving a trade, if you're looking for a trade, you're looking for what makes them better and what do I have that I don't need. And if you can make them better with something you don't need, then you can then see what they have that they don't need, and if that can make you better. That's the only way a trade will actually work. Otherwise, it'll be very perceptive, because trades are the perception of value, who you deem good compared to what they deem good. But the only way you can actually make a trade work is if your teams get better. There's a lot of websites for this, for trade valuing, things like that. But normally in seasonal leagues, it's hard to get a trade done, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I've never had much success doing it. There's too many variables, and then you got everybody else wondering, oh, is this collusion, or are these guys working? You know, it's sketchy on a seasonal league to do trades.
So, player trends you should get in front of when both drafting and building and planning for your team. If there's a general consensus that this is a super heavy like wide receiver year, right? A lot of people are going to take wide receivers earlier, which means there's going to be less available in a draft, right? Or if the season progresses and out of nowhere, a lot of the NFL teams start utilizing the tight ends really high, and they're overachieving normal or normality. Everybody has a perception of value, and if you can catch this early enough and be correct, you could trade for a tight end and maybe get more out of that trade because you project into the future he's going to overachieve. right? But most of the time, one of the biggest things I do is I look at not only last season's production, and you can also look at the strength of schedule going into the draft, like who's playing who's got an easy run schedule, and then plan that way. But what I'm saying is I like to go in prior to the draft, and I like to look at the player pool, and I rank them by points. Because when they change the point system, okay, it automatically changes all their points. So that you can see, in this point system, these are the people who are benefiting, right? So I like to use that as a tool, kind of like a secret tool not a lot of people utilize. People who can benefit from certain point systems. Age doesn't matter in a seasonal league. I'll take a 50-year-old wide receiver if he's producing right now, because I need to win right now.
And kind of keep an eye on preseason. Sometimes you'll get in there, get ready for your draft, thinking a guy is going to be a good starter, when really he might have got bumped down to a 2 or 3 because somebody during the preseason over-excelled. I notice that a lot with receiving. So just don't assume that, oh, I've got the number 2 receiver on that team, so I'm going to get some points. He may have been last year, he might not be this year.
Yeah, typically all teams do this a little differently, but the more a player plays in preseason are usually the people that are questioned. They want to see that guy. So if he's getting 13 catches in a preseason game, that's probably because they don't know if they can trust him yet. They want to see more. Right? If he's a solidified wide receiver 1, he's going to get less snaps.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's more of when the starters are on the field, watch where the quarterback is going more. See who he's trusting as compared to everybody on the depth.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, thing I think that a lot of people are going to throw out is the playoffs happening right now. You don't really count these stats or look at it, but right now these are where the teams want to go, and these are the players that they're trusting. So this is really where you kind of want to look and see where they're going when they really need it, who are the players that they want. So don't forget about this right here. Pay attention for next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that will do good all season, and then right when it's time for you to win the championship and win the money, they take them out because they're planning for the playoffs, and you need them the most now. So, kind of an outside, out of the box way of thinking, which isn't necessarily a rule. Typically, you want opposites, and what I mean by that is, like, if a team's really bad at defense, then fantasy-wise, their offense will do good because they're on the field more. If a team is really good at running the ball, then naturally you're going to have receiver production just because people are counting for the run. So there's a lot of names that maybe you don't know of that will be productive. All those things have to be considered. But, I mean, is there any other outside tips you would give to somebody just starting out in fantasy?
If you're just starting off, just learning fantasy, don't be afraid to ask somebody. Usually you've got a friend, a relative somewhere who has been playing it for years. Try and get some advice. Sink in as much info as you can. You can never get too much information, too much background on it.
Mm-hmm. Just stay open to really everything and don't lock yourself into one thing or one strategy. You gotta just go with what happens.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add to this is don't be afraid to make a move. Make a ballsy move, especially if you believe in it. Because the only thing worse is not making the move and you were right. That's the worst. But in a seasonal league, you have to take a shot. You have to take a shot or you have no shot.
Trust in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
That just about wraps it up for just tips and overview of a seasonal fantasy league. Like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.
Good luck to you.